I've been telling true crime stories for a couple of years now, and throughout this whole time, I've known a story. I knew I would tell it one day, but I purposely held off on telling it because it kind of hits close to home. Now that I'm back in Alabama, I've decided to go ahead and pull the trigger and tell the story and put it out there into the YouTube sphere. Today, I'm at my home in Montgomery, Alabama, and I am going to be talking about a serial killer named Raymond Eugene Brown. I'm going to kind of tell you his story a little bit. I will explain to you how the story is close to me, and obviously during the telling of the story we'll talk about his victims, but mainly we're going to focus on one instance of his. We're going to be talking about the murder of Linda Lamont, which actually led to Raymond Eugene Brown's capture. Now, I told you that the story hit close to home to me, and before I really get into the details, I thought I would explain a little bit. The murder of Linda Lamont actually took place when I was 5 years old. It actually happened just a couple of houses down from me. You see, we moved here when I was 4 from Phoenix City, and I was raised in the house here. To the right of it, this house belonged to the Johnsons. They had a boy that was just a year or two younger than me, and we were best friends growing up. Then on around, there was a family that lived over here in this house who was my sister's age. An elderly couple lived over here, and Linda Lamont lived right there in that house on the corner. We were right here, just a couple of houses away, when it happened. We almost didn't stay in the neighborhood, but ultimately, financially, it would have hurt my parents to move. So we stayed, and I grew up right here. And now, actually, my kids have grown up here too, because we still own this property. As I am about to start telling the story, firstly, I want to say this one's going to be different. It's not going to be as fully edited as most of these true crime videos I do, because there's not a lot of pictures out there on the internet. Like, there's no pictures of Linda. There's really no pictures of Raymond Eugene Brown. So there's not going to be a whole lot of visual aids. I do have some crime scene photos, but that's about it. But on August the 10th of 1989, Linda Lamont, her boss, called her family to ask if Linda was okay. Her boss said that Linda didn't show up for work, which was unusual, and then she wasn't answering his calls. Linda had never just not shown up or called before. Linda's mom tries to call, and she gets no answer. The phone rings again, but this time it is the school board calling to say that Linda's children, 6-year-old Aaron Lamont and 10-year-old Sheila Smoke, they didn't come to school today. Linda's mom, her name was Beverly Evans. Right then, she knew something was wrong. So Beverly and her husband rush over to the house. She started banging on the front door. No one answered, thinking that maybe Linda and the kids just overslept. She walks around this end of the house, and she goes up to this little window, the one on the right there, which she knew was her 6-year-old grandson's room. She knocks and yells, "Is anyone inside?" So after knocking a few times and asking if he's in there, she finally hears a terrified yes coming from the bedroom. Beverly tells Aaron to come open the front door, and she can hear shuffling. The 6-year-old little boy crawled out from under his bed and goes to the front door and unlocks it. And then when Beverly goes inside, she opens the front door and she sees one of the most horrific and terrifying scenes imaginable. There's her daughter, Linda Lamont, laying in the living room on the couch. The front door opens into the living room. So as soon as she opened the door, she could see Linda laying there. There's blood all over the place. It literally looked like a set from one of the Friday the 13th movies. There was so much blood everywhere. And in fact, I can tell you that many years later, there was a family who purchased the house, and they did know about the murders, but they got the house for cheap. And they went to replace the carpet. And when they pulled up the existing carpet that was there to expose the concrete underneath, on the concrete in a giant circle, it was still stained red from Linda's blood. Now, me and my dad were out here playing catch, and they came to get him to show him. And just because I was out here with him, we walked up there to the house, and we saw with our own eyes the giant blood stain on the concrete floor. It was absolutely horrific. Beverly, she quickly grabs a hold of Aaron, hugs him tight, and gets him out of the house. She goes back in to check on Sheila, Linda's 10-year-old daughter. And as she opened the door to Sheila's room, she finds Sheila laying on her bed with the handle of a knife sticking out of her stomach. Now, don't mind you, like I said, Sheila's 10 years old. She was laying there on the bed nude. She had been raped and then brutally stabbed to death multiple times. And then the bastard left the knife in her with the handle sticking out when he left. So Beverly calls 911, and the Montgomery Police Department swarm this cul-de-sac here. The investigators enter the home, and obviously I didn't know at the time, but I found out later on. Detectives immediately noticed that Linda has been raped and then stabbed multiple times, just as her 10-year-old daughter was, but it was more sexual with Linda. She was stabbed in her breast, in her rectum area, and in her vagina multiple times in all those places. And then she had a 27-inch slit cut in her from her throat all the way down to her private areas. It was a big enough slit that it had completely opened up her stomach, her abdomen area, and it is truly horrifying. It's a nightmare scenario. It really is. It's even hard to talk about. Now, on top of the brutal murder scene that he left, the killer had also taken a Polaroid of Linda just before he murdered her. And then he left that Polaroid laying on top of the television set in the living room. The police thought maybe that he took the picture and he was going to keep it as a souvenir, but he got spooked or something and he accidentally left it. Then investigators found laying on the floor, covered in blood, a composition notebook. And it was open to a page with a score chart on it that had the names Raymond, Sheila, me written on it. There was also bloody playing cards scattered everywhere. They noticed that on that score chart, under the title of me obviously being Linda Lamont, because it listed Raymond and Sheila, and so Linda had just won a game of cards. Pretty much, the bastard got outraged because he lost a game of cards, so he rapes Linda and Sheila and then kills them both. It is truly pathetic and just absolutely horrible. Detectives looking at that score chart immediately go to Linda's mom, Beverly, and ask who Raymond is. And she tells them, he was Linda's boyfriend, Raymond Eugene Brown. Detectives have a suspect already, and they immediately begin searching for him. They issue a warrant, so if he gets pulled over, they could take him into custody. And then they start looking into his background. Now, what I am about to tell you, this part of the story, is extremely aggravating to me. Actually, I don't know if aggravating is the word. It makes me downright angry. The Montgomery Police Department discover that Raymond Eugene Brown was sent to prison in 1961 when he was 14 years old for murdering 3 of his own family members. 3. Triple homicide at 14. He stabbed and slashed his 83-year-old great-grandmother. He did the same to his 63-year-old grandmother and his 31-year-old aunt. Raymond Brown's aunt had been stabbed over 100 times in that murder. She was sexually assaulted, and she had a slit cut from her throat all the way down to her private parts, just as he would go on to do many years later to Linda Lamont. So he goes to prison for those 3 murders for 12 years. While in prison, he stabs and slashes dozens of other inmates, to the point that his prison nickname was Blade. I mean, really? Even with his history, the parole board paroled him in 1973. He stayed on parole for a couple of years until he tried to rape and kill his landlord here in Montgomery. It was because he didn't have the rent money, and she was talking about evicting him. So he assaulted her. He tried to rape her and kill her. But unlike his other victims, she got away. So they violated his parole and sent him back to prison. And if that's not already wild, in 1986, they paroled him again. And it was sometime shortly thereafter, 1986, when he would go on to meet Linda Lamont. And then almost instantly after he met her, he moved into Linda's house here with her and her 2 children. Can you believe it? I mean, I totally say that Linda and Sheila's deaths are not only on Raymond Eugene Brown's hands. I mean, sure enough, he's the one that did it. But the Pardons and Parole Board should have never let him out of prison. He had 3 bodies outside of prison, several more inside of prison, and then an attempted murder. Why would that person be eligible for parole? I just don't get it. If the Department of Corrections, Alabama Pardons and Parole Board or whatever, here in Alabama had done their job, Linda Lamont and Sheila Smoke would still be alive today, probably. So the detectives who are investigating Linda's murder, they discover all of this past of Raymond's, and they can't believe it. They absolutely can't. They have a bona fide serial killer on their hands. So they put everything into trying to find him before he kills anyone else. They decide to go public with the case to get info on Raymond's whereabouts. And at the same time, they were kind of hoping to warn everybody that the serial killer's out there. So they hold a press conference, and they tell the public that Linda and Sheila's murder seemed to be ritualistic, and they call Raymond Brown a psychopathic killer who kills for pleasure, and they labeled him as extremely dangerous. Their very first tip onto the whereabouts of Raymond Brown didn't come from a citizen. It actually came from a deputy sheriff who coincidentally his name was Michael Williams, which is kind of wild. But nonetheless, the deputy tells them that at 6 a.m. on August the 10th, which was several hours before the bodies were found, Raymond Brown was in a car wreck. Right here in this corner, right now we're just north of Wetumpka, Alabama, kind of near Lake Jordan. The sheriff said that he was drunk and he ran his car off the road. But at this time, they hadn't discovered the bodies yet. They didn't know. So the sheriff let him go and towed his car. At that point, the detectives launched a massive manhunt in the area But ultimately, Raymond Brown avoided capture for 2 additional days, 2 whole days. He hid in the woods. Then a gas station attendant who worked here in this gas station, now it's changed names a couple of times, but back then it was called Emco. It was an Emco gas station. But the gas station attendant saw the wanted poster and recognized him and called 911 and said this guy just came out of the trees and he came in to buy a Coca-Cola, and quickly police swarmed the Amco gas station and take Raymond Eugene Brown into custody. Raymond Brown was convicted on April the 27th of 1990 for 2 counts of murder in the first degree, murder while serving a life sentence, and 2 counts of murder during a sexual assault. All of those charges were all capital offenses, and Raymond Brown was sentenced to death. Now, Raymond would go on to appeal his death sentence on the basis that the media coverage of Linda and Sheila's murders and his capture tainted his case. But ultimately, his death conviction and sentence was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. Raymond Brown was scheduled for execution, but before that day could come, Raymond Eugene Brown evaded justice once again. He died of natural causes in prison just mere weeks before his execution. Now, Aaron Lamont, Linda's son, the sole survivor of this massacre, because he was a victim, I can't find much about him. I'm assuming that his father probably changed his name so he wouldn't get recognized for it and that kind of stuff. And right now, I guess he would be about a year older than me, so he would be about 37. Hopefully, he's doing all right. This brutal murder by Raymond Eugene Brown, or all of his murders actually, they're all horrible and senseless and shocking to say the least. But the thing is, it happened just a couple of doors down from my house. 3 doors down from my house, which was wild. That is going to do it for this episode today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, go down and hit that subscribe button. Take it a step further, hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. If you want to help support the channel, check out the links in the description box below. It helps us keep going. Thank you all. I will see you again tomorrow. Please stay safe and stay healthy.